Now, you guys know here at Zorpazorp, I love stupidly massive hobby projects. Like this, or this, or this, which is actually the Imperial Palace board packed down into 100 pieces. But 5 years ago, I began a hobby journey that is stupidly massive in every possible sense. I set out to make a Warhammer campaign like nothing you've seen before. So what do we need to play Warhammer? We need armies, and we need scenery.
Today, we'll be putting the armies aside and focusing on building 250 square feet of bespoke custom scenery, and there is a huge amount of variety, from green verdant forests, classic castles, to war-torn urban landscapes from the grimdark far future.
That campaign is of course the Mark of Calth, my mega Horus Heresy campaign that has just relaunched over on my second channel, Zorphammer.
The campaign features 12 episodes that take place over a huge variety of geography and locations, all needing different bespoke Warhammer scenery. So today, in one single mega fast-paced video, we're going through the entire campaign and looking at how each of the monster boards was made. Now, these boards are not only huge and intricately detailed, I also had a lot less time to build them than I had originally planned, as Games Workshop had invited me to fly to Warhammer World.
This is the mecca of Warhammer World.
And I knew I needed to get the campaign filmed and ready to launch to line up with the new edition of the Horus Heresy. So brace yourself for the ultimate in speed crafting scenery techniques.
So let's make some mental scenery fast.
Our first location is a very unique structure for a Horus Heresy campaign, Leptius Numinous, an aged castle from Calth's early history that has been retrofitted to be the summer residence of a local politician. So it's this crazy blend of almost medieval style castle stonework and modern 30k era architecture. With such a tight timeline for scenery creation, I've got to be resourceful. Now, for years, you guys have seen me working on my Minas Tirith build, and you know what Minas Tirith looks a hell of a lot like? Rome. And you know who are basically Romans in space with huge spaceships, huge guns, and huge Roman-style fortresses? The Ultramarines. So it's time for Minas Tirith to go grimdark and become Leptius Numinous, the Governor's Palace on Calth. Now, the first part of this build is going to focus on converting the original Minas Tirith layout into a new setup that better suits Leptius Numinous as described by Dan Abnett. And our first task is to take our two halves of the Tubertown inner city board, change up the orientation of the inner and outer ring walls, and make one 8-foot long outer wall for Leptius Numinous. When these two boards are laid next to each other so that the walls align, the front edges aren't in sync, but that works perfectly because I need to build a big drainage culvert and a causeway that leads up to the front gate. I cut down a baseboard to perfectly fill that gap and mocked up the causeway from XPS foam, carving some brickwork patterns to trick up the archways using different sizes of stonework for a bit of visual interest. Then I made a whole bunch of extra flat stone fascias, which would serve as a foundation for the city above that carries it all the way down into this canal, creating our culvert wall, including some additional stairs to match the stairwell from the Minas Tirith board that used to connect the two board halves together. On the top of the bridge, there needs to be some finishing touches with a thin layer of modeling compound flattened out and then rolled out with my texture roller to match the Minas Tirith road texture. And then I trimmed away all those edges and made some recessed battlements and filled in all of the trim joins with grout and sealed the whole piece with isopropyl alcohol and watered down PVA. Then I gave those foam elements a big prime in white to match the Minas Tirith stonework and started hooking into our rock molds. Now, as always, we're just building a super higgledy-piggledy rock face here, which we will then blend together into this big, seamless, cohesive piece of cliff with modeling compound. I worked my way around the culvert, adding more panels of foam for support and then more rock molds, and then blending them all together with compound until I had a fully scenic culvert. Then I gave the rocks a paint job, leopard spotting some diluted washes, which you guys have seen about 1,000 times on the channel over the last year, and then threw a heap of scenics down into the river culvert for that beautiful, slimy, rocky culvert bed. With the culvert added to the board, we can see another very obvious issue, the height discrepancy behind the walls. I repurposed an old bridge element from the original Osgiliath board and hacked it apart until it was the right height to be a nice ramp, and then pulled off the battlements and gave a big stone texture with modeling compound onto the flat surface, just like the bridge earlier. Let that all dry, trimmed it up, got it neat, and remounted the battlements, as well as adding some foam edging to kind of blend everything nicely together. Down goes our grout and our water watered down PVA. Before mounting the bridge, I extended the flagstone texture of the courtyard wall, and then with the bridge in place, these pieces are seamlessly joined as one big castle with the ramp working its way up the slope. The front of the castle still needs some work. I threw a bit of grass texture down around the culvert, and then I put together a little trench to help alleviate the height discrepancy with the front of the wall using some more Osgiliath bridge leftovers and some modeling compound. I then knocked up a few other details across the build, covering joins between the original elements with new walls or buttressing, and then dressed in a whole heap of the original Minas Tirith buildings, as well as adding a bunch of Mechanicus Gribbly, sleek laser-cut MDF Ultramar-style structures, just that modernization right to start hinting at the grimdark future of Leptius Numinous. And with those final touches in place, and then the big outworks and the rampart wall, we have an absolutely epic battleground, and how awesome does it look? Covered in 25,000 points of Horus Heresy, straight out of the Horus Heresy novel Know No Fear by Dan Abnett. We've got all the key features from the battle, the culvert, the bridge, the gatehouse, even an explodable wall so our Baneblade can smash into the inner courtyard just like the story from the book. After the siege at Leptius Numinous, the Ultramarines mount up and head into the outskirts of Numinous City, our second geographical region, which is going to be split across two massive boards. The first is the Landshire Port District. This industrial area also features a blend of the older style of stonework from Celts prehistory, reinforced with modern imperial supremacy. So once again, we have some Middle-earth scenery masquerading as Celth, with a portion of my Osgiliath megaboard, which is literally the perfect portside ruined dock. But I'm obviously going to need a huge amount of proper Horus Heresy grimdark style urban ruins. Now, over the last 5 years, I've been working on another massive board that I'm sure you guys are very familiar with, the Imperial Palace on Terra. This build is actually coming back to Zorpazorp very soon, and here is what I've done so far here in New Zealand, but back in Australia, where we shot Celth, I had already made a start on the first part of the palace with the Games Workshop Hive City build. This build involved an absolute boatload of plastic kitbash skyscrapers from the Games Workshop Cities of Death and Sector Imperialis scenery kits. Verticality is key for these structures. We need the city large enough that our titans can duel in and out of the buildings and the city streets, but when the buildings are this big, they often become unplayable static features that can't be interacted with by any other units. So I developed a system of modular assembly so that when you open a building at any point, the inside is completely playable. I also really love the claustrophobic aesthetic we see in so much of the artwork, with crisscrossing gangways going backwards and forwards through the urban landscapes of the grimdark future. So I built this whole kind of system of interchangeable walkways and doors at different heights on the buildings, different spacings, so that no matter what configuration our city buildings found themselves in, I could line up a lot of gangways and passageways across the streets. The other massive issue with the towering structures in terms of playability is access. How do models get from one level to the other realistically? I addressed this in two ways, with a bunch of ladders and stairwells kit bashed into the kits, and then a fully motorized and functioning elevator.
Up comes our little elevator.
That's absolutely pointless, but amazing.
Yeah. A lot of the scenery we're looking at today is still in storage in Australia, but very soon will be brought here to New Zealand to be added to the ongoing Zorpazorp megaboard projects.
Now, even when we're looking at these monster dioramas, no one wants to see boring blank walls in their hobby rooms, and so for the last 2 years I've been working with Displate to give the Zorpazorp studio a much needed glow up. You guys have already seen these epic Displate metal posters mounted directly onto my studio door with magnets, but they mount even easier to normal walls with Displate's unique, easy, safe magnet mounting system. But today, we've got something very special to add to the collection. A limited edition Warhammer Displate with the mighty Primarch Sanguinius, shining immortal with just an incredible finish. Sanguinius and the key ornaments are 3D printed onto the Displate, which features selective gloss and matte finishes for extra emphasis, and golden glitter on the frame. It absolutely sparkles, and it's going to be an awesome centerpiece for the hobby room. There are only 1,000 1,000 of them available, so get over to Displate now, and limited edition designs are not discounted. Discover new original art or officially licensed designs from Star Wars, Marvel, Elden Ring, Call of Duty, Warhammer, and many more, available in stunning finishes including Displate Textura, which is pushing the boundaries of what metal posters can be.
Click my link in the description to get the limited edition Warhammer design, or if you'd like some regular or texture designs, use my code link down below to get 23% off one Displate, 27% off 2 to 3 Displates, or 33% off 4 or more Displates.
The final element of a fully modular urban city is the ground itself. Now, I had my lovely Sector Imperialis plastic game tiles from GW, but in their 2x2 foot configuration, they're essentially useless for this kind of build, so I hacked them up into little 8x8 inch tiles so I could isolate the individual pieces of road and building foundation, and then built just an amazing modular city system. Now, I actually did a video just a few weeks back painting up the new Horus Heresy diorama here in New Zealand. So if you want some painting tips for your buildings, give that a gander, as all the techniques that I used there, I essentially worked out while painting this city. Essentially, it is a lot of airbrushing, a lot of washes, detail work, and then playing with oil paints, and we have just some city skyscrapers that look absolutely baller. So the Landshear Port is looking amazing, but for the next area of the Numinous City, we are going to need a much bigger board. This is the Merchant and Commerce Guild Hall of Numinous City, and it suddenly finds itself the site of a vicious combat in the final hours of the battle for Calth. This beast is massive, and there's no way I could ever afford to build a structure of this size from Games Workshop plastic kit, so it was time to fire up the 3D printer. My mates Adam and Felix from Inferno Hobbies 3D Printing went absolutely crazy and printed me a huge amount of prints, as this was before I'd set up my own glorious print farm here in Aotearoa. The files that we used were all sculpted by my mate Andy from Warlayer, and they are just amazing for kit bashing city buildings. If you want to score these stunning STL files for yourself, use my link down in the description. It sends a kit back to support all things here at Zorpazorp, and you'll get just amazing files. In fact, Andy, since we built these boards, has been busy, and he has launched a whole bunch of new file sets for this kind of mega modular system. They're absolutely amazing, and you'll actually see me crafting with those new files later on this year when we return to the Imperial Palace. Now, this cathedral was just a monster to build. I broke it down into 4 sections. The southern 2 quarters, they have like a road running through them to link with the broader city, and that is spanned by a bridge, which then meets these 2 gigantic towers on the southern end. Then the 2 north quarters are dominated by the bulk of the main cathedral structure, with another 2 towers up the far end. I focused mostly on printing wall sections with like a little bit of roofing, so I had most of the roof structure blown out, which made gameplay really easy, and I even built a whole bunch of fully destructible, removable elements so that the guild hall could go through these like different states of damage as the wordbearer titans try to blast their way into the building and get to the bunker below. In fact, you can see that in this week's battle report, which just went live right now over on Zorphammer. It is very cool. Now, the foundation for the structure was a mix of hand-carved foam, Games Workshop road tiles, and even some Necromunda tiles, and then the entire thing was painted pretty rapidly with rattle cans and then big acrylic washes. Then the final detail is essentially just a massive, massive boatload of rubble, which just gives so much life and kind of granularity and breaks up the 3D prints and all the elements. It just looks phenomenal once it's rubbled. The entire monster board here came together in just 3 days. That is some fast crafting, and it is very monotone, but that's kind of by design. I really wanted the blue and the red armor of our legionaries to pop beautifully and make sure it looked phenomenal on camera, and it just worked an absolute treat. And not only did this serve as the centerpiece for the guild hall in the final battle, but also one of the quarters bulked out some of the Landshear Port board, proving the versatility of the modular piece. With the cityscape now covered, we look to our next most important biome, which we can see just next to the guild hall in the final battle. In the epic finale of the campaign, 2 games are played simultaneously as the Ultramarines on the planet's surface defend one objective, while their Primarch Rabute Gilliman leads a kill squad through an orbital station in the upper atmosphere to secure a second objective. So here we are going to need a super versatile set of scenery to represent 3 different configurations of the Zetzen Verid avant-garde orbital station. Once again, we're relying heavily on 3D printers for this one. This is the Killzone set that was sent to me by OTP Terrain and Scenery. It's just the perfect starting point for our space station. There's a huge mix of like walls and floors and different tiles. It's so damn modular. It's basically Lego. I quickly realized that some of it was too modular and set about making this big pile of pieces into more permanent scenery, joining walls to floor tiles, and then making larger structures by mounting combinations of floor tiles and walls to larger sheets of 3mm MDF paneling. All the key regions of the space station from our story need to be present. We've got large hangars, security stations, chambers and corridors and passageways. We need the transverse assembly area for our kill squad to teleport into, and of course, the control room itself, our main objective. With the board coming together, I tricked up the station with a bunch of resin 3D printed details, like consoles, cabling, vents, conduits, as well as a whole bunch of Games Workshop Mechanicus details, all that beautiful Mechanicum pipework, basically anything to add life and detail to the board and sell it as a fully functioning mechanical ecosystem of the Mechanicum. Painting the scenery was so much fun. Just rattle cans first down all over everything, that classic heresy grey, but then so much fun detail work. All the metallics get worked over with lead belcher either through the rattle can or the brush, and then I kind of weathered and detailed those with brown and black oils, and then a bunch of brighter paints, like those pops of colour to pick out our console details, the display screens, cablings, power cells, and suddenly the board just comes alive. A big black acrylic wash over all the Killzone parts to kind of bring up that lovely printed detail, and then some light staining with brown oils to build up that space station grime. Now, this board was used for 3 battle reports in the campaign in different configurations and is actually now part of the Imperial Palace board. I actually just shipped it over here to Aotearoa, and I'll be using this modular system for an awesome new Imperial Palace episode coming in a month or two, so stay tuned for that.
Well, the Horus Heresy is well and truly back here at Zorpazorp, and I have some mental content planned, from the Black Sands of Isfahan 5 right up to the battlements of the Imperial Palace, not to mention Calth. So if that's getting you excited, it's time to add your name to the Zorpazorp Patreon honor wall.
Today, I've got 3 new statues up on the Patreon honor wall. Marky Hansen has the Beast Darktine Ogren model in a gold finish. Insomraf has a dual Lightning Claw wielding Legionary in a hybrid of Mark II and 3 plate in an aged bronze finish, and that guy has an Ultramarine Invictus Praetorian Breacher in a gold finish. Joining the Patreon is an incredible way to support the channel. It literally just keeps everything together here at Zorpazorp, and you can score yourself your name on a banner or a plaque on the wall, or even a statue like these epic Megazorptrons dedicated in your honor.
So if you want to see even more Horus Heresy content, add your name to the Patreon honor wall. Patreon is linked down in the description, and just a massive shout out to all of my Patreons. Thank you so much. None of this would be possible without you.
But there are a few locations left, and the first is the verdant forests of the Calth Arisine Hills, the site of a vicious slaughter of loyalists mustering for deployment to the fleets above in orbit. Now, this board was going to be filmed in Ireland with Ollie from Broadsword Wargaming, so we needed a board in the Emerald Isle, and luckily Ollie and the OG god of scenery, Luke from Luke's APS, had smashed out a gorgeous start for us, building this stunning 6x4 kind of green hilly landscape. They built this in 3 panels. It's just like classic Warhammer scenery, right? Heaps of polystyrene landforming, then a bucket load of plaster rock molds set into the hillside, blended together with modeling compound, and then after a simple paint job, layers and layers of scenics, foam flocks, sawdust scatters, all different grades and subtle color variations to give that landscape a lot of realism. Then we of course need our scatter terrain on top to match the setting from No No Fear, which is essentially some light forestry and the odd kind of crumbling stone ruin. So first up we need some trees. Ollie got to work on this and banged out a bunch of really nice tree clusters using tree armatures, first bending them into shape before thickening the trunks with a little modeling compound before they were sealed and painted. Then a thick layer of contact adhesive goes down all over the armature to create a strong grab for the branches before a layer of lichen. Then some spray adhesive onto the lichen for extra bonding, and several layers of fine foam flocks to create this fantastic layered foliage effect. Then for our stone ruins, Ollie grabbed some of the Age of Sigmar plastic ruins and hit them with a stone finished spray paint before kind of leveling up their paint job and building some flock and lichen to give a mossy, weathered vibe. Perfect for the overgrown overthrown ruins of ancient Calth. And then with those elements dressed into the board and our armies deployed, we have a glorious table for the Calth Irisine Hills. Now, our final 2 locations for the campaign, neither Ollie nor I made, as we filmed them at Warhammer World in Nottingham. We have this fantastic blasted wasteland with a ravaged highway and bridgehead, and this glorious Mechanicum mining facility, which is perfect for the epilogue of the campaign, which takes place beneath the planet's surface in the subterranean arcologies, which were both a joy to play on. So not including the Warhammer World boards, as we didn't make those, that is over 200 square feet of scenery ready to play the most insane Warhammer campaign you've ever seen. So, what are you waiting for? Get your ass over to the campaign playlist down in the pinned comment and go and see this scenery getting used. I've put a huge amount of work into the campaign to make it super enjoyable for folks who don't normally like watching battle reports. It's really story-driven and immersive, so go get swept up in the narrative of the betrayal at Calth. A massive shout out to Hugo Abraham, Eamon, Leonard Schrar, Merrick, and Justice Wingart, the latest Patreon to score themselves a plaque on the Patreon honor wall. If you would like to get your name up on the Patreon honor wall, get a plaque, a statue, get on the banners, go and check out Patreon, link down below, to keep Zorphammer alive. And I will see you guys very soon in the next one.
We march for Calth.